Kathy, that meeting between President Zelensky and Boris Johnson concluded in the last couple of hours, and very much a show of solidarity between the governments of those two countries. A show of solidarity, of course, that's been accompanied by weapons and been accompanied by money over the last couple of weeks. And it is worth pointing out that this isn't just about high diplomacy. We've been in Ukraine for about the last 10 days or so, and as you're walking the streets, if people find out you're a British broadcaster, they are genuinely appreciative of the support Britain has given Ukraine during this crisis. Today, though, as I said, all about high-end diplomacy, and that, on the face of it at least, is a good thing. It's a good thing because it does indicate that for now the door is open for a possible de-escalation, but it's also a good thing for Vladimir Putin, because as long as this goes on in the way that it's going on, for as long as it's going on, it means he's taking up a phenomenal amount of global diplomatic bandwidth, and that is what he wants.
As the diplomatic big guns of Britain and Poland arrived in Kyiv today to meet the Ukrainian president, the owner of this shop in the centre of the city was taking stock. Gun sales are up 15% here since January. The owner told us his clients aren't panicking, just prepping. In Mariinskyi Palace, a prime minister with a lot on his plate, including cake, was welcomed by a president with 100,000 Russian troops on his border.
It goes without saying that a further Russian invasion of Ukraine would be a political disaster, a humanitarian disaster. In my view, it would also be, for Russia, for the world, a military disaster as well. And the potential invasion completely flies in the face of President Putin's claims to be acting in the interests of the Ukrainian people. The UK and other countries will be judged by the people of Ukraine and the world on how we respond and how we help.
During talks with President Zelensky, the PM announced a multi-million-pound support package for Ukraine, designed in part to reduce reliance on Russian energy supplies. Also a new regional format of cooperation between Britain, Poland and Ukraine.
This is not going to be a war of Ukraine and Russia. This is going to be a European war, a full-fledged war, because no one is going to give away territories and people any longer.
In Parliament today, Ukrainian MPs waved the flags of countries supporting them during this crisis. The Union Jack had pride of place. Germany's flag noticeably absent. Boris Johnson was due to call Vladimir Putin yesterday. The call had to be cancelled in favour of a meeting with MPs angry at Partygate. The Kremlin rejected a request to hold the call today, so it's now due to take place tomorrow. Hungary's Viktor Orban, though, made his appointment in Moscow with the Russian leader.
As you know, we were promised that NATO's infrastructure would not advance 1 inch further east. Everybody knows that. Today, we see where NATO is. Poland, Romania, the Baltic states. They said one thing and did another. As the people say, they played us. They simply lied.
Putin said he was not satisfied with the US response and reiterated demands that Ukraine be permanently excluded from potential NATO membership, but was also more specific about his concerns. Putin also said that he would continue to talk to President Macron of France. They've spoken twice since Friday. If Russia was hoping that this whole episode would push Ukraine further away from NATO, it appears that for the time being, the opposite is happening.
So I just wanted to go back momentarily to that Vladimir Putin press conference earlier today. In the press conference, he reiterated this rolling narrative around his concern when it comes to the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO, which is actually quite unlikely to happen. But he was a little bit more specific in his concerns in the press conference, which is interesting. He made the point that if, hypothetically, Ukraine was ever to join NATO, and if Ukraine then tried to retake Crimea, that would put Russia and NATO at loggerheads.
Paraic O'Brien, thanks very much indeed. Well, now the Tory MP Tobias Ellwood, who chairs the Defence Committee, has predicted that Russia will invade Ukraine. It has said that NATO should move troops into the country immediately. He joins me now. Thanks for coming on the programme. So let's just be clear here. Are you saying that NATO troops should go into Ukraine? Surely not.
Yes, absolutely. This is the language that Putin understands. And I'm pleased to see the Prime Minister is in Ukraine. And I hope this bigger picture is expressed to him. I really am concerned that I seem to be one of the lone voices that are suggesting that we're falling in to Putin's strategy. He recognizes and still blames the West for the demise of the Soviet Union. His strategy is to turn his country more towards the East, towards China. In order to do that, he has to convince his own people. So when we move our tanks, not into Ukraine, but a full country away, that will not stop an invasion.
But hang on a second.
When we agree to...
Ukraine is not a member of NATO. It's not about to become a NATO member. So we can't really be sending troops there. I mean, a few trainers, maybe some, we send lots of anti-tank missiles, but actual British troops in Ukraine. But I just wonder, by saying that, you're risking, you're going to inflame the crisis even more, aren't you?
I must pick you up on that point. I'm going to pick you up on that point. I'm sorry, division bill is going here. I must pick you up on that point. People here in Britain, and indeed across Europe, are hiding behind this rule that somehow, this guidance that if they're not a member of NATO, then you cannot provide NATO troops there. That didn't stop us in other parts of the world. That didn't stop us from stepping forward and defending democracy in other parts, in unstable areas. And we need to recognize that this is European security with huge consequences if Ukraine is invaded. And as I was just saying, if we start to agree to meet Putin, he actually feeds into his ego of being taken seriously as a superpower again. If we impose sanctions after an invasion, that will also fit into his strategy of actually convincing those people, his own Russian people, don't actually work with the West. Let's turn to closer ties with China. That's where he wants to take Russia. This is the bigger picture that we have to deal with, and we're in denial at the moment as to what is actually happening here.
Indeed, but what you're suggesting is, at the moment, entirely unrealistic. The Americans don't want to send American troops into NATO, nor do the French, nor does any other member of NATO, quite frankly. I think you're on your own here with this one, Tobias Ellwood.
Yes, and that's a really, really sad place to be, I have to say. I would wish Britain would recognize this bigger picture. I wish we would then express this and rally other troops to say the only way that you can prevent an invasion is actually by placing a NATO division in Ukraine, not around it, which is exactly where we are right now. We need a Churchillian approach, not that of Baldwin. This is our Cuban Missile Crisis with huge consequences for geopolitical security over the next couple of decades. What we do now in the next few months will be critical as to how that plays out.
But the way you say it, and bringing in Churchill as well, it also makes it sound as if this is an opportunity, this crisis, for global Britain to kind of emerge on the world stage. Is that the way you see it? Are you using this crisis to define what global Britain is all about?
I'm not saying that that's the reason, our opportunity, we should take it. I'm saying this is a necessity of what should happen. If sanctions take place, oil and gas prices in the UK will increase. If sanctions are put in, food prices will increase here in the UK. There will be consequences here. Meanwhile, Russia, Putin, will turn to the east. Nord Stream 2, he won't care about that because he wants pipelines going to China. There's a symbiotic relationship developing between Russia and China. Russia provides the oil and gas and the military hardware. China provides the tech and infrastructure, both having a mutual dislike for the West, both not willing to follow the international rules-based order. That is where the direction of travel is, unless we step forward.
So tough talk from you now, tough talk from the Prime Minister in Kyiv. I put it to you that the Prime Minister is currently a laughingstock in Moscow, partly because that phone call he was supposed to make yesterday with Vladimir Putin, he couldn't make because he was too busy putting out fires lit by Sue Gray's report. Unless we sort out the political mess at home, there is no point in global Britain on the world stage.
Well, you underline why we need more Alan Brooks in number 10 right now to understand the bigger strategic picture, not just internationally, but domestically as well. Some of the U-turns you were describing before we move to this subject are tantamount to that. My concern is that we had half a report put out yesterday, but we haven't had any of the big changes? What are going to be the differences between now and what we've been living with through before? How we can improve the leadership, the command and control, the very culture of what Downing Street is all about. We've had a number of weeks in order to provide that information. None of it has come forward yet.
Right, let's call a spade then. In the spirit of Churchill, Tobias Ellwood, are you tonight on this programme calling for the Prime Minister, as some of your colleagues have done, to do the honourable thing and step down?
No, I'm not going to get drawn into that right now. We're still digesting the rest of the
Andrew
the
Mitchell went there yesterday. David Davis went there last week. Why aren't you going there now? Why beat about the bush?
Like many MPs, I don't think you can accuse me of that. I've been very forthright in making it very, very clear the changes that I want to see. We've seen half the report come out. We're now waiting for the other half because 14 of those incidents are now being investigated by the police. But I've called for a new chief of staff in number 10, perhaps a 4-star general, a character that the nation can look at and say, my goodness, change is coming around the corner. I've called for this cultural change, a way that not only we can look back at past victories such as Brexit, the general election and the vaccination program, but about winning future battles. That's the concern, is our ability to do that. And that's the question mark right now that we're all asking ourselves.
Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much indeed. Kathy.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you.